Hi everyone, my name is Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and I'm going to start a new reading vlog today. I have been meaning to film this reading vlog for quite a while. I did this last year where I decided to read other booktubers' favourite books of the year, and I went through lots of best books of, in that case, 2021 videos to find books that I thought sounded really cool, recommended by booktubers who I enjoy watching. And I did the same thing this year in January, went through loads of best books of 2022 videos, picked 6 books that I want to read, bought those books, and haven't done the reading vlog, and we're nearly halfway through the year now, so I really need to start it. But the interesting thing about this is because it's been so long since I researched these books, read about them and bought them, I remember very little about why I've picked them up. So I have notes in my notebook reminding me which booktuber recommended which book, and we'll just go from there. All right, so I found the relevant page in my notebook. So first up, Iggy over at Literary Iggy, she recommended The Employees by Olga Ravn, which is a book that I've had on my radar for a while because I think it's about work culture, but it's quite sci-fi based as well. This is translated from the Danish by Martin Aiken. I'm not gonna get too deep into blurbs here because in this video, I'm gonna be reading all of these books and I don't want to repeat myself, but let me insert a clip here from Iggy's video where she is talking about the book and why she loved it.
It's kind of a sci-fi critique on capitalism book, but the reason why I put it in this category is because of the really compelling and like one of the things of that book, which a lot of things impacted me, but one of the things that was most striking to me is the intimate relationship that both humans and the humanoids have to the foreign objects that were transported from the new planet that the spaceship is orbiting around. Highly, highly recommend it. It's also super small. I wish I owned it, but alas, I sneakily read it in like one work shift, so I had to put it back. Don't tell my boss.
Iggy also recommended this book, as did CJ over at CJ Reads, so I decided to pick this for the second book for this video. This is The Seas by Samantha Hunt. All I know about this one is that it's about a woman who thinks or has been told that she is a mermaid by her family. She is a misfit in her local community, and then I think she falls in love with a land dweller. But again, here's a clip from CJ where she speaks about why she loves this book. And I will link everyone's channels in the description box down below if you happen to be looking for new booktubers.
The Seas feels like holding your breath underwater in the tub. The Seas feels like when language fails. I would say The Seas feels like floating. It's for fans of Maggie Nelson, isolation, and water signs everywhere. Yeah.
Sunny over at A Sunny Book Nook recommended Fruiting Bodies by Kathryn Harlan. And honestly, I don't remember anything about this, but just looking at the cover of this book is making my heart happy. It says, in stories that beckon and haunt, Fruiting Bodies ranges confidently from the fantastical to the gothic to the uncanny as it follows characters, mostly queer, mostly women, on the precipice of change. Echoes of timeless myth and folklore reverberate through urgent narratives of discovery, appetite, and coming of age in a time of crisis. I mean, yes, obviously, of course I was going to pick this one. Thank you, Sunny. Here is a clip where Sunny is talking about why they love this book.
I read a lot of short story collections this past year, and I want to talk about so many of them, but I kind of narrowed it down to this one because I think these short stories are some of the ones that have lived in my brain the longest for all of the year so far. And in fact, I even wrote an essay about one of the short stories in here, but I think all of them were constructed in a way that was like very intentional and well done. And the way that magical realism or fantasy or even just like the reality of the world was incorporated into these stories felt really dynamic and sort of and like vibrant and present.
Kiran over at Kiran Reader recommended this in her best books of 2022. This is The Pumpkin Eater by Penelope Mortimer. I don't think I have ever read any books by Penelope Mortimer, but this one just sounded really intriguing. It's about a woman called Mrs. Armitage, yes, who has had 3 husbands previously, 1 currently in her present, so a 4th husband, and a numberless army of children. She's building a glass tower in the countryside, and then one day she passes out when she's in town at the Harrods department store, realizing that her life is never going to be one of happiness. I don't know, it kind of sounds like Carol by Patricia Highsmith meets Something by Muriel Spark. I don't know, I may be projecting, but this is what Kiran had to say about why she loves it.
This story is so interesting to me because, first of all, it's one of those like backlist books where it's very like modern in its telling. We're not told everything. The author is not holding our hand, telling us every single thought and vibe and emotion and things. Like, you kind of have to read between the lines. But this is the story of a woman who is lonely, and like, because existing is lonely, right? Like, it is tough to exist in the world, and she is looking for completion through having children, through being married, through men. And through this story, we kind of see that push and pull, that tenuous relationship that women have with men. And I think it was just so well done.
I forgot to say that CJ also had a Toni Morrison on her 2022 best of list, and it's been a while since I've read a Toni Morrison, and I thought this would be a good reminder to read another one, so I picked up 2 from CJ's list. So this is Sula by Toni Morrison, and this is why CJ recommended it.
Sula feels like 2 divergent paths that come from the same root. I would say this is for fans of female friendship, genius writing, and dark corners.
And finally, Ali, lovely Ali over at Alison Pages, recommended this, and I had been thinking about it, but it's a huge book, and then I thought, oh, go on then. So I went for it. She recommended this in her best books of 2022. It is the winner of the 2022 International Booker Prize. This is Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree, and it's translated from the Hindi by Daisy Rockwell. Yes, it is big. However, the text is not tiny, which I love. This is about an 80-year-old woman who is reflecting on her life, and I really hope it's going to be good. I have read several reviews that say that it's kind of confusing and that you should let yourself be swept up in it, but we'll see how I get on with it. This is what Ali had to say about it and why she recommends it.
Now, I fully recognize that this book is a bit of a challenge, not only in length, but also in prose. However, I encourage anyone who might read this to tackle it like you would a nonfiction. And that is to pick up what you can, pocket what you love, and remember there's no test afterwards. This one is about a family, but we mostly follow the elderly mother within that family who falls into a pretty deep depression after the death of her husband. She then befriends a trans woman, and the two of them go on this journey to Pakistan in order to face their traumas surrounding the partition split together.
So there we go. Those are 6 books from my TBR that I'm going to be reading over the course of this video. As usual with my reading vlogs, I'll talk to you about the books as I'm reading them, but we'll also go on some walks, maybe do some cooking. We'll see. Please pull up a seat and join me, and hopefully we're going to discover some great books in the next, well, for me, couple of weeks, for you, the next however many minutes. I'll be back when I've read something and have news to report. In the meantime, Mr. M and I are about to go for a walk on the heath with Lola, so why don't you come along for that? I can assure you it's a different day. I'm just wearing this dress all the time at the moment because it's very cooling. It is just after lunchtime, been out in the garden. Mr. M has been sorting out the garden, as I mentioned in a previous vlog. I'll show you a couple of cutaways. He's reseeded the lawn, so that grass is coming up nicely. And he's been trialing some no-dig beds. And he's put some wire on the fence to grow some jasmine up. It's coming along slowly, but surely. But I'm here to talk to you about books. And I'm sorry if you can hear people putting up scaffolding further down the street. But I have now read The Employees by Olga Ravn, which is translated from the Danish by Martin Aitken. The subheading is A Workplace Novel of the 22nd Century. And this book, it made me feel lots of things. It made me feel so many things. It is such an odd little book. It's set on a spaceship called the 6000 ship. That's right. Yeah, the 6000 ship. The crew are made up of humans and humanoids. And this book is split into interviews or statements that are made by different crew members. And you don't know at the beginning of each statement if a human or a humanoid is speaking. And it becomes increasingly more difficult to work out who's talking the further into the novel you get, because this is a book all about what it means to be human, and the longer they are away from Earth and its traditions and its rituals and societal norms, some of which make sense and some of which don't, the harder it is to remember the guidelines that they used to use to establish what it means to be a person. And this is heightened when they go to a planet called New Discovery and they find these objects which they then bring back to their spaceship. Some of them describe these as pink eggs, and I think that's what's on the cover of Iggy's version, which must be the North American edition. And these objects, some of the humans and humanoids feel a real closeness to. And I don't think that this is supposed to be a book about IVF, but as someone who is currently full of a lot of IVF drugs, as that seems to be my constant state just ever, I really read this in that way, that these people and these humanoids were surprised by how close they felt to these egg-shaped things that were brought into their spaceship. And I'm going to read you a quote here. I hadn't been here very long before I started to feel a certain kind of connection with the objects in the room. Whenever I went in there and sat down, a strange sense of calm would wash over me. Anyway, this has now led to me going in and checking up on the objects at least once an hour. Mostly I just pop my head round the door, have a quick look and make sure everything's all right. But the day before yesterday, you removed the very object to which I feel most attached. The one with the pink belt tie around its middle, the gift. And since then I've been experiencing palpitations, a tingling in my hands and feet, a sense of derealization and a feeling of impending disaster. And when you are going through IVF, you do feel all of those things, and you do feel completely detached from a lot of things around you, and you do feel like you're lost in space and you're thinking about what it means to be a person and what life is, and you're invited or told that you should be holding all possibilities simultaneously in your head at once for years at a time, which seems like an impossible task. So I do think there are lots of parallels with this book and IVF, but I think the more common ground when discussing this book would be that it is a conversation about being alive and what it means to be alive, and what is someone's sense of purpose, and how can we quantify that or qualify that. And I think it's really clever. And I have been looking for a book that reminded me of Severance, the TV show Severance, and I think that this is it. Because yes, it is about working and about being told how you should exist, but it's got that sci-fi element, and it's just weird, and there are so many things that you don't understand as a reader. Like, you don't know what's going on, and a lot of the characters don't know what's going on too, which is what I love about Severance. And if you haven't seen that, it's been a while since I watched the first series actually, but it is about, actually I can't really tell you what it's about because that would be a spoiler, but it's very, very eerie. And you follow these people who go to work in a basement in an office block, and you're not really sure what job they're doing, and all of the other departments are cut off to them. They're not supposed to leave the room that they are in. You do find out, I think within the first couple of episodes, a big twist, but I don't want to say what that is, even though you find it out early on, because I think it's part of the joy/terror of watching that show. But there was a particular bit in this that really reminded me of Severance. Oh yeah, it's this bit where one of the crew members is describing the layout of the spaceship. To the right, another 2 sleeping wings, the outlet and the restoration room, also known among the crew as the cleansing room. I've also heard it referred to as the egg box. And what else is there? Oh, you'd like to hear about that, would you? Well, there's the correction compartment and the vanilla pod, the loony soother, and you need an update. That's what they say when someone says something stupid. The room of no dreams, the skin doctor. I'm not sure I can explain that one. Parts of this also reminded me of Some by David Eagleman, which is a book that looks at, is it 40 different imaginings of the afterlife, and they're all very surreal, otherworldly. It has such gorgeous phrasing like, the fragrance in the room has 4 hearts. None of these hearts is human, and that's why I'm drawn towards them. Parts of this reminded me of The Need by Helen Phillips and Leave the World Behind by Ruben Alam. It was so wonderful. Maybe one of my favourite books of the year. So that is a good start. The next book I'm going to pick up is Sula by Toni Morrison, so I'll come back and talk to you when I've read a bit of that. But baking interlude, did you know, because I didn't know because I never looked into it, that you can make crumpets in 20 minutes? I imagine that you would need to let them rise and stand for ages, but they're not like that. They're more of a pancake meets drop scone type thing with some yeast involved, and I would quite like a crumpet. So shall we go and make one? I will put the recipe in the description box down below if you would like to try it. I have bought a crumpet mold because you put that in a pan, but just in case you don't have one of those, because who would have one of those, I bought it the other week when I made these. I used a cookie cutter. Make sure it's a metal one, not a plastic one, obviously, but yeah, I made a Christmas tree shaped crumpet because that was all I had to hand. So if you have a metal cookie cutter, which you're more likely to have than a crumpet mold, then I recommend using that. Okay, let's go make some. Hi, it is too hot for a wig today. I'm here to talk to you about 2 more books, and I'm going to be honest, this vlog is going to have been a little bit itty bitty because I've been in and out of hospital again, all with stuff that was planned, and I'm fine, but it has meant that I haven't turned on the camera as much, and also has meant that, I don't know, some of the books that I've been reading, I think if I was going to absolutely love them, I still would have loved them, but I think a couple have had a lesser impact because of my brain and drugs that I have been on. So I'm going to briefly talk about these next 2 books, but I kind of wanted to preface that because I think that it's always best to contextualize when we read a book, and sometimes we absolutely love a book because it came along at the right time and place, and sometimes books maybe get a bit of a disservice because of the time and place that we happen to be reading them, and I feel like maybe that's happened this time. So I've read Sula by Toni Morrison, and this one is beautifully written. I can't fault the writing style at all. I feel like when you read a Toni Morrison, or at least I feel when I read a Toni Morrison, I'm just sinking into the prose. You feel in such safe hands. You know that she is weaving something wonderful and horrible with lots of different layers. And this is about friendship. It's about evil in inverted commas and where that comes from, looking at inherited trauma. And I really like how she brings together beauty and menace with stuff just kind of rippling under the surface. So let me find you a couple of lines that I underlined. As Reverend Deal moved into his sermon, the hands of the women unfolded like pairs of ravens' wings and flew high above their hats in the air. And then on the next page, at first they stood there, their hands were clenched together. They relaxed slowly until during the walk back home, their fingers were laced in as gentle a clasp as that of any 2 young girlfriends trotting up the road on a summer day, wondering what happened to butterflies in the winter. And that very gentle extract is following something very horrible that has just happened. There's a lot of imagery to do with birds, like you're feeling like you're, I don't know, coasting a little bit with the narrative, and then suddenly it'll dive and do something horrendous. Yeah, another bird imagery here. It would be 10 years before they saw each other again, Nell and Sula, and their meeting would be thick with birds. I really like that image. And finally, let me read you this one last quote because I really liked the use of colour in this. Nell alone noticed the peculiar quality of the May that followed the leaving of the birds. It had a sheen, a glimmering as of green rain-soaked Saturday nights lit by the excitement of newly installed streetlights, of lemon yellow afternoons bright with ice drinks and splashes of daffodils. It showed in the damp faces of her children and the river smoothness of their voices. Even her own body was not immune to the magic. And this imagery of rivers as well, again, should be soothing, but something very horrible has happened in a river, which has meant that it is not soothing at all, or at least creates that juxtaposition I was talking about of beauty and menace and not being able to see where one ends and the other one begins. So yes, that was Sula. And would I recommend this as a place to start with Toni Morrison? I think I would always recommend Beloved as a place to start with Toni Morrison, but yes, I enjoyed this one. And then I read Fruiting Bodies by Kathryn Harlan, which is a short story collection, and there were some stories in here, a couple that I really, really loved, and others that I felt as if I'd read versions of them in other collections, maybe. It definitely completely embodies that feeling of not knowing what to do with yourself when you're a teenage girl and feeling that life is moving quite quickly but also slowly and your body is not really your own anymore. This paragraph here I thought was brilliant. If I were to diagnose something special about that summer other than the omnipresence of death, I would say it was the last year before language reached all parts of me, before words started knocking softly on my head, trying to get in. I like the creepiness of growing up. I think that's something that should be talked about more. This is the same narrator's friend diving into a lake. Vienna went first, bending and arching her back, examining the water as if creating a door in it, and then diving. So that story is about two friends who are told not to swim in a lake because it's a bit poisonous, and obviously they want to then swim in the lake. I think my favourite was a story called The Changeling, which was about someone's cousin's mum going through IVF to have a baby after she had already adopted a child. And then the cousins talking about how this new baby was going to be a changeling and shouldn't be there, and how it was going to displace the daughter, the cousin. It was really creepy, and I think really creepy in the sense that I think it really managed to get into how cruel and unsettling friendships can be sometimes, and how blame can be displaced when you're caught out doing something wrong. It really left this haunted feeling in my body. There was also a story about two women who were in a relationship, and one of them was growing mushrooms from her body, and that was an extended metaphor for illness. Also reminded me of Alia Whiteley's The Beauty. This is definitely a magical, realist, fabulous, heavy collection. Definitely has vibes of Kelly Link, Ramona Ossabel, Karen Russell, as I said, Alia Whiteley. And yes, there were definitely some standout stories in here for me, and others that I could take or leave, but that is often the way with short story collections. So that is me. I've caught you up. This weekend, Mr. M and I are going to walk over to a place called Fenton House. Why am I speaking so slowly? I'm going to feel like I'm giving my mouth time to let my brain catch up. I promise my brain is in here somewhere. We're going to walk over, if it's not too hot, to Fenton House, which is in Hampstead. It's a National Trust garden and it's very beautiful. So I will insert footage of that garden here. That was what I was going to say. There we go. That's what I'm doing. We're all caught up. I hope you're okay. I hope this vlog is not too piecemeal. It probably only feels like that to me because I know how many weeks I'm filming this over, but to you it's happening all at once. So maybe I should shut up and stop breaking the fourth wall. That would probably be a good idea. Okay, here is some footage of the garden, of not our garden, of Fenton House garden. I wish this was my garden. And I'll be back when I have picked up another book. I think I may head to The Pumpkin Eater next. what's funny? I was so sure that I had never read a book by Penelope Mortimer before. I said that at the beginning of this video. I was like, I've never read it before. Very excited to read her because The Pumpkin Eater is one of the books I'm reading for this video. And then I started reading this book and I got about 30 pages in and I thought, this is really reminding me of a book that I have read before. Don't worry, I hadn't read this book before, but I thought it really reminds me of a book that Persephone published called Daddy's Gone A-Hunting. Guess who that's by? It's by Penelope Mortimer. So I have read her before. So having read 2 books by her, or nearly 2 books by her, my conclusion based on this material is that she's a little bit like Yuko Tishima, who is a Japanese writer who I really love. All of her books feel very, very similar. They all feel like they're a bit autobiographical, and that is by the author's own admission as well. She's writing about motherhood, about not particularly wanting to be a mother, having all these complicated feelings around it, being judged for her sexuality, not always being the most attentive parent. All of her books focus on that in one way or another. In Penelope Mortimer's books, the ones that I have read, she is talking about abortion. She's talking about happiness and where happiness can be found. Happiness specifically for middle-class white women who don't have a job, are at home most of the time, and their identity has been really heavily tied to their family life, and they thought that that would be enough, and it doesn't really seem like it is. Out of these 2 books, I definitely prefer Daddy's Gone A-Hunting. That wasn't a favourite book of mine when I read it, but I thought it was a brilliant discussion about abortion, which was published in, I think, the 50s. Yeah, it was published in 1958, and it's about a mother who is watching her daughter go through the same kind of teenagers that she has, and then she helps her daughter to get an abortion. And it was a very radical book for when that was published. And for that in particular, and the discussions surrounding abortion, motherhood in that, I really, really adored it. The Pumpkin Eater maybe feels a little bit too similar to Daddy's Gone A-Hunting for me. Maybe I would like this more if I hadn't read her other book. I'm not sure, but also maybe I feel like I have read quite a lot of depressed housewife stories over the last year or 2, and I just feel like I have read other books that I have much preferred on this subject. This book has an element of psychosis in it as well. We're not sure when the main character is talking about things that are actually happening and when she's talking about her dreams. She's not sure really either, and it definitely has influences of the yellow wallpaper in here. I talked about the blurb a little bit at the beginning of this video, but essentially this is about a woman who has a lot of children and has had many different marriages, and her new husband doesn't want to have any more children, and she feels disappointed by this, but not because she absolutely adores her children, but because she feels like that's her purpose, and she's not really sure what she's supposed to do if she's not having more children. It's about a breakdown, essentially. There is a lot of dialogue in here and not much description, which was interesting. I think maybe it was mostly dialogue because the character is just listening to things happening around her, but she's not really noticing details. So it's like the world is just getting on with things and she's just standing still. I think it's all right. I didn't love it, and I wasn't feeling as though I really, really wanted to read the end of it, to be honest. It's not going to be a favourite, and if I was going to recommend a book by Penelope Mortimer, I would recommend Daddy's Gone A-Hunting instead. So that one, less successful than others in this video, but now I am going to dive into, or I've already started reading, Tomb of Sand, and the first paragraph in here is amazing. Let me read this paragraph to you. A tale tells itself. It can be complete but also incomplete, the way all tales are. This particular tale has a border and women who come and go as they please. Once you've got women and a border, a story can write itself. Even women on their own are enough. Women are stories in themselves, full of stirrings and whisperings that float on the wind, that bend with each blade of grass. The setting sun gathers fragments of tales and fashions them into glowing lanterns that hang suspended from the clouds. These too will join our story. The story's path unfurls, not knowing where it will stop, tacking to the right and left, twisting and turning, allowing anything and everything to join in the narration. It will emerge from within a volcano, swelling silently as the past boils forth into the present, bringing steam, embers, and smoke. That is such a dramatic beginning to a story and promising lots of things. So we are following at the moment this woman who is, I think, in her 80s. I don't think it's said that in the book itself, but the blurb says that it's about a woman who's in her 80s. And she has come up to a border. There are lots of different discussions of borders in this, and that border is the wall in her house. She has hit it. She doesn't want to get up again. She doesn't want to continue with life, except for the fact that she loves her grandson. What I'm finding really interesting about this book is the lyricism in the prose, and this is a book in translation, but there's lots of internal rhyme, and I wonder if it rhymed in Hindi and the translator has not only translated it but translated it into rhyme as well, or if that's an element that she has added. Perhaps other bits rhymed in the original text and she's making other parts rhyme instead, where she could make rhyme happen. I don't know. Let me find you a couple of examples. But if you stare at them fearlessly, will the border guards understand? You have crossed the border, they reprimand. She'd play dead, eyes and nose closed, ears shut, mouth sewn, mind numb, desires extinct, her bird had flown. I don't know, this really intrigues me, because translation is obviously a rewriting of a book, but not just in a word by word sense. It is taking the essence of a book and translating that across. So I can already see why a book like this would win the International Booker Prize, because the translation itself must be very intricate and must be paying a lot of detail to the onomatopoeia of the text, with lines like one more not, a no not, a no. I'm gonna have to put this on the screen actually, because you need to see the homophones, otherwise it won't make sense. One more not, a no not, a no not, a new not, a new not, a new desire, new, becoming, the new refusal of no, flutter, flitter, flap, flap, flap. Yeah, no, I am really drawn into this one, so I'm going to continue reading it and I'll come back in a bit. This afternoon, Jean is coming round for a cup of tea in the garden. She's down from Edinburgh, so I'm going to make a cake. I love this book called A Good Day to Bake by Benji, a woman that I follow on Instagram. I'll put the cover here. And yeah, it is a raspberry, honey and yogurt cake and it's delicious. So I'm going to make that and we can have a slice of that in the garden, and I'll come back and talk to you soon. Hi, okay, this is going to be the last clip of the vlog. I finished reading all of the books. This wasn't the vlog that I had envisaged. I've read all of the books and I'm going to be talking to you about all of them. I already have spoken to you about most of them, but I had hoped to check in more during the course of this vlog. But to be honest, I've been filming this over the course of a month and just a lot of stuff has been going on over this last month. In fact, one of the last books that I read was just after coming around from general anaesthetic, and actually added to the ambience of the book, which was surprising. I'll talk about that in a second, but yeah, I'm just happy that you're getting a video today, and I hope that's enough for you. I know that you won't mind, and I know there'll be several people being like, Jen, if you need to take a break, take a break. But filming videos really does help when everything else is being a bit overwhelming. Sometimes I need to take a break, and fair enough. But so far this year, I've managed to get a video up every day on a Sunday, and I'm hoping that saying that doesn't jinx me and mean that I'm going to stop doing that soon, or need to take a break. Hopefully not, but yeah, a lot has been going on, a lot of health stuff, and I'm just glad that I can keep reading and checking in with you and making these videos, because as I said, that structure does assist my brain, so thank you for that. Right, so I finished reading Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree, and this is translated from the Hindi by Daisy Rockwell. This book This book is a lot. This book is really impressive. This book refuses to be categorized in many ways, and that is the point of it. It's refusing to be pinned down, both in, I would say, genre in many ways, but also just as a narrative. It refuses to stick to a linear and plays around with that a lot. So the narrator says at one point, this is after they have been deviating from the main plot line and they've been exploring what appears to be just fanciful things the narrator would like to focus on, and then also side characters. It says, enough, let's get back. Although the tale has no need for a single stream, it is free to run, flow into rivers and lakes, into fresh new waters. But for now, we must insist on not straying. So for the time being, we simply won't. Let's return to where we began this story, to the land of two women. But pretty soon, falling over my words, pretty soon after it says that, it just starts going off on tangents again. Here's the thing, a story can fly, stop, go, turn, be whatever it wants to be, and you may well fall speechless, but if a story wants, it can stand in one place, refusing to budge, take root and become a tree, which is another life form. An immortal witness of everything from the gods until now, planting the twists and turns of the story in curling stems, laying it to sleep among leaves, perfuming the breezes with it. It's like this narrator is saying, I don't really care about your limited time and your mortality. I've been here forever. The world will continue without you. So I'm just going to take my time and tell you all of the branches of the story that I want to focus on, because life shouldn't make sense and fit into this neat little box that you would like it to. This, as I said, is about an older woman who is grieving the loss of her husband. Grieving the death of her husband. She's feeling the loss of him. And she decides that she is going to travel, and she travels with a woman who is Hijra, and they go to Pakistan, and she's kind of reliving her trauma. It's a book about family, border, gender, imperialism, colonialism, and partition. The whole book feels very fluid. The waves lapped at the edges of the scene, retreated, then returned, as though they might at any time carry the scene off altogether. The scene itself seemed mysteriously drawn into the waves. There's loads of linking imagery throughout. The rhyming that I talked about, the assonance in the last segment, it continues all the way through the book. At one point, Ma's son says that they shouldn't give her food left over from other meals. He says, make something fresh. You can't serve them rotten food. Don't even give it to a beggar. He'd die. You'd get sued. Again, that rhyming, but also it's showing indulgence in the money that they have, but I think it's also linking in with the way the story is being told. Like, don't repeat things that have been said elsewhere, come up with something new and interesting to say. And the language is just gorgeous. I underline so many things. Daughters are made of wind and air, invisible even in moments of stillness when only the very sensitive perceive them. It has all of these blended borders between rooms, people, genders, countries, and I had to write down somewhere a list of books that I was gonna do book maths with this book on. Okay, I have found my list. So essentially book maths is where I say if you add these things together, you will get, in this case, something like Tomb of Sand. So if you added together The Waves by Virginia Woolf, Please Look After Mother by Kim Suk-shin, Exit West by Mohsin Hamid, and This One Sky Day by Leonie Ross. If you added all of those together, you would get something like Tomb of Sand. At various points, this book becomes a series of lists, and an image carried on throughout that I particularly loved and made a note of was a comment from one of the kids which said, we always knew Mother had a weak spine because she's someone who is bent constantly to other people's wishes, and this book is a journey for her to kind of reclaim that backbone, that spine, and it's also a journey to reclaim her name, not just Ma, not just who she is in relation to other people, but who she is in relation to herself. And I kind of love that this book is so long and the spine of this book is so thick and so big to kind of represent that. And I know that the English translation of this is much wider than the Hindi original, and I don't know if that's just because of font size. It may well be because there's a lot of space inside this book, as well as having quite a large font. But I just like the anatomical links you can make between pieces of a book and pieces of a person, in this case Mars' spine. So yeah, this book I don't think is going to be a new favourite, but I'm so glad that I read it, because it's just very different. It's very masterful and whimsical, as well as being hard-hitting and difficult to read in places too. So yeah, thank you, Ali, for talking about this and making me remember that I had wanted to read it. And then finally, I read The Seas by Samantha Hunt. This is her debut, and I think it was out of print for a while. It was reissued a few years ago. This one has an introduction by Maggie Nelson, and Maggie's talking about how much she absolutely loves it. And it's funny reading this book, there's so much discussion of the colour blue. I could see why Maggie loved it, given that she wrote a whole book about her love of the colour blue. This book, I think, is actually a book that can have quite a few conversations with fruiting bodies, because it really embodies that feeling of drunkenness as a teen, not because you are drunk, but because you're often having out-of-body experiences and not really feeling yourself, and you're worried about who or what you're going to grow into. This is the book that I read just after having a general anaesthetic, or at least I read a big chunk of it in hospital, waiting to be sent home after having a general anaesthetic. And I think that definitely both enhanced and also somewhat ruined my experience of it, because I felt quite drunk, I suppose, when reading it, which reflected how the character felt. But then also, memory and anaesthetic don't go too well together. But I can tell you, this is about an unnamed narrator. She is a teenager and she believes that she's a mermaid. Her dad told her that she's a mermaid. And it's very difficult to work out at first what is true and what is imagined. Our narrator uses folklore as a means almost to elevate her life. Like, she's going to tell herself this grand story, which is going to get herself out of the mundane story of life on this island that everybody else is living. She has become infatuated with the soldier, but also we wonder if he is real too. The sentences in here are absolutely gorgeous. I didn't actually have a pen on me when I was reading it, so I wasn't able to underline places, but let me see if I can find you some of my favourites. So there's this one scene where she's driving and the sea is catching up with her behind her. I look again in the rear view mirror, and quite suddenly there is a beautiful blue, as though the storm finally broke. It is a truly gorgeous colour. This blue is chaotic and changing. I recognise it immediately. Jude, I say, look, and I point into the rear view mirror. It's the ocean coming up behind us, I say. I watch as the blue rises up like a tidal wave so quickly that I am certain it will catch us soon. It doesn't want us to leave, I say, and check the mirror. I don't think we can outrun the ocean, but I'll try for your sake, I tell him, and accelerate. I look again in the rear view. The colour blue fills the entire mirror, and watching it, I think, this is how a small northern town in America works. It enlists one beautiful thing like the ocean or the mountains or the snow to keep people stuck and stagnant and staring out to the sea forever. I watch the blue in the mirror. It is so beautiful that I find it hard to look away. I look towards Jude and he's not there, he is gone. I reach my hand over to touch the empty seat and even glance down underneath the seat looking for him. I look away from the road for too long, he is gone, and the water rushes up behind me like a couple of police officers with their blue lights flashing, with their steel blue guns drawn. The language in here is stunning. I could eat it. I just think it's lovely. The plot I found was a bit lacking, and I wasn't sure about some of the imagery that was used. So there's a lot of alcoholism on this island that she lives on. The majority of the population are deaf as well. And then she also talks about people who have certain disabilities. When she's in a doctor's waiting room, she's really staring at someone who's sitting opposite her. And I don't know, I felt as though, excuse the plane overhead, I felt as though disability and deafness were being used as this like othering thing. Like, isn't this interesting? Aren't people weird? Instead of treating them like actual people. And fair enough, that may be what the narrator is doing, but it kind of felt like it expanded outside of the narrator, and that was just what the whole book was like. Let me throw in all of these odd, weird people for us to stare at on occasion to make things seem even more surreal. I thought that was a bit cheap, and I didn't love that. Obviously, I didn't love that. So again, a book that I'm happy to have read, but not one that is going to become a favourite. So now I have read all 6 books, and I want to say a big thank you to CJ, to Sunny, to Ali, to Ignatia, to Kiran for recommending these books on their channels. Definitely have found one new favourite from this, and that is The Employees by Olga Ravn. I haven't stopped thinking about this book. I think that it is wonderful. I will link all of their channels in the description box down below. Please go and subscribe to them, check them out, because they are wonderful. As I said, I'm not sorry that this video isn't longer, because I've just done my best. I've done my best, and I'm going to give myself a gold star for putting this video together anyway over the course of the last month. But I had wanted it to be longer, so please know that that is the wish I had for this video in my soul. But I hope that you are happy with the video that you are receiving. Yes, so out of the 6 books, am I gonna rank them? Let me see. I think it's kind of close, actually. I would say that at the bottom of the pile we have The Pumpkin Eater and The Seas. Then we have, ooh, let's see, I think after that, I think Sula by Toni Morrison, then Fruiting Bodies, then Tomb of Sand, and then The Employees, which is just hitting myself with it. I always do that with books. Well, I think it's when I've picked up a heavy one and then I pick up a light one thinking it's going to be heavy, and I just throw it at my face by accident. Anyway, I think that this one is like much, that wasn't a sentence. This book is much more of a favourite than all of the other ones. There is a big gap, what I'm saying, between 2 and 1. So if I was going to recommend one personally from this video, I would recommend this. But also I would say, if you think that you can tackle this one and give it a go, absolutely worth your time. And obviously other people have put these books on their favourite books of the year, and maybe you would too. So if the plots of any of these appeal to you, do check them out. I will list the books in the description box down below. I will list the Booktubers channels that I have mentioned. Thank you for joining me for this video. If you are new and you would like to subscribe, that would be a wonderful. If you enjoy my content and you would like to, and have the means to, only if you have the means to, consider supporting me on Patreon. That would be incredible. Support over there enables me to make free content for everybody on here. There are a few extra things over on Patreon too, but mostly all of the content is here. And support over there helps me out massively. It also funds my time to make these videos accessible by creating captions, and just especially in recent times when health has not been great, the support over there has been invaluable. So thank you very much. If you can't support, do not worry about it, but if you have the means and you would like to, the link is there. Every dollar is massively appreciated. Okay, I said that last bit all in one breath and now I'm out of breath. I am gonna go try and cool down somewhere. I hope you're all doing okay. Let me know what you have been reading recently. Let me know in a comment down below. Tell me if you've read any of these books too. I would love to hear about it. I will see you next Sunday for a new video, and I'm sending lots of love your way. Bye.